Welcome to Everyone Loves Guitar, where we get to sit down and talk with interesting professional guitar players and related music industry experts. If you love playing guitar, stick around. You're in the right place. Hi, this is Craig. Just want to let you know you can now advertise here on Everyone Loves Guitar podcast. For more information, go to everyonelovesguitar.com/advertise. That's everyonelovesguitar.com/advertise. Hey everybody, this is Craig Garber from Everyone Loves Guitar, and I am now on a mission to get with all the awesome guitar players in Alabama, and we're fortunate to have one today. We're with Bill Hinds. Bill's from Montgomery. He was immersed in music from the beginning. His mom was actually a classical organist, and great music was playing in his house all the time. He learned early on that melody is everything, and if you watch him play, that is representative of how he plays. Like loads of other people from his generation, playing the guitar became a foregone conclusion once he saw the Beatles appear on Ed Sullivan in 1964. And man, that is the trigger for like every guy I talk to. I'm 54, so like 10 years older than me, everybody's like, that's their thing. It's funny. At 15, he began gigging around local music scene that included the Commodores, Tommy Shaw, Beth Nielsen Chapman, and Alan Hines, who I interviewed in episode 272. You can find that on everyonelovesguitar.com or iTunes, and loads of other gifted singers, players, and songwriters in the Montgomery area. In 1976, Bill made the trip to Muscle Shoals, Alabama, with Montgomery's fabled band Harmony to do some recording, and that led to a series of callbacks for demo work and record dates. At the time, he said everybody was taking their cues from the Dobie Brothers and Steely Dan and making slick LA-type records. Bill says he thinks he was getting work because he sounded more West Coast than a lot of the Alabama and Nashville cats back in those days. He continued touring clubs and playing around Montgomery while making the commute to the Shoals for session work, and that was 200 miles, so we'll talk about that. After a 2-year break from the music business for personal reasons, he then moved over to Muscle Shoals in '86 and never looked back. During this time, he worked on albums by Wayne Newton, Roy Orbison, Johnny Taylor, McAnally, Sawyer Brown, Denise LaSalle, Shenandoah, Dobie Gray, the Forrester Sisters, and Huey Lewis and the News. After playing on the Forresters, Talking About Men, and I've Got a Date albums, he began touring the world with them, and he eventually relocated to the mountains of North Georgia. He met singer-songwriter Paul Thorn while he was living in Muscle Shoals, and he's been with Paul's primary guitarist ever since, playing acoustic, electric, and slide guitars on 10 albums and touring with one of the best rock and roll bands on the road and appearing on the DVD, The Paul Thorn Band, So Far, So Good Live, as well as TV shows Late Night with Conan O'Brien and Jimmy Kimmel Live. He also oversees Paul's web presence and web strategy. Three of Paul's last 4 albums have actually been on the Americana Top 15. Bill's back living in his hometown of Montgomery, Alabama, and he teaches guitar occasionally in his home and online, and he's a busy guy. You should also know that the 2 people that referred me to Bill, which was Alan Hines and Kelvin Holly. Alan's works at Musicians Institute out in LA, and he's been a teacher there forever. He's got a great solo career. And Kelvin Holly, who has a great career in Muscle Shoals and has played with Little Richard, they both said the exact same thing. They said, man, you need to talk with Bill Hinds. He is one of the best blues players I've ever seen. And Bill's actually a lefty, and he's also a great slide player. So you check him out. He could do it all. Man, thank you so much for your time. I appreciate you coming on the show.
Thanks for having me, Craig.
You got it. So in 1976, you left to go to the Shoals, but you were just 19. That's pretty young. I was curious what prompted you to go there, and how'd you get work once you got there?
Well, I was already working there somewhat. I played in a band called Harmony in Montgomery, and I can't remember how the connection with the band was made, but somehow the connection was made with a production team in Muscle Shoals to cut some production demos and to try and get a record deal. So we went up there and cut demos. We played a lot of original music, and we demoed some stuff. And they must have liked what they heard, and I just started getting callbacks. So I commuted back and forth for a couple of years before moving up.
You mentioned that you sounded like more West Coast than the other guys. Why do you think that is?
Well, I've always been drawn to sort of slick produced music. And, I cut my teeth on Steely Dan and Larry Carlton and a lot of the West Coast guys. So I just sort of naturally, started to integrate that kind of thing into my playing. And at that point in time, with the success of the Dobie Brothers and Steely Dan, people were making a lot of records in that vein, and sort of less, and even here in the Southeast, sort of less blues based, less Southern, less country, and I just kind of naturally fit into that mold, I guess.
So your influences were primarily those West Coast cats as well, is what it is.
Yeah.
So what finally convinced you to move to the Shoals permanently and stop driving 3.5 hours each way?
Well, I think you answered your own question there. It's just something I always wanted to do. Man, when I was, 15, 16 years old, Boz Scaggs came out with a record that had a song on it called Loan Me a Dime.
Oh, with Dwayne. Man, that's the shit. Yeah.
And yeah. And it's such a great track, such a cool track.
Yeah.
And I used to listen to it over and over and over again. I looked at the back of the record and I saw that it was cut in Muscle Shoals. Mm-hmm. And that was the first I'd ever heard. I live in Alabama, but I'd never heard of Muscle Shoals until that point in time. And I saw that and I thought, man, that's what I want to do. That's where I want to be. And so when the opportunity came, I jumped on it.
That's great.
Yeah.
I miss that. That's the one, not the one, but there's a couple of things I miss from, digital versus looking at the album or even the CD. Right. And that's one of them, because I got a lot of education.
I did too. That's how I found, I'm a child of the 70s, and that's how I found Larry Carlton. That's how I found Lee Ritenour. That's how I found Robin Ford. That's how you discover all these players, because you're impressed with these things that happen on these records, these guitar solos and guitar parts and stuff.
Yeah.
And you can refer and see who played guitar and dig deeper. Check it out.
And even with producers, I remember I knew Tom Dowd's name from, the Allman Brothers and and then so I'd be in a record store and I'd pick up a record. I said, man, this looks good. And I don't really know it, but I look at the back and said, oh, Tom Dowd. Oh, let me get this.
Right.
It's I miss that educational component. And I guess you could hop online, but it's different when you're in it, as the music's playing and you're just absorbing it. It just seemed like it sunk in better,
Yeah. And somehow now, I don't know why, but somehow now it just seems like so much trouble to open a browser and actually type in a search term.
It's
just,
well, you got to be sitting in front of
you
got to be sitting in front of the computer to I listen to music I have actual speakers. You probably have speakers too, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. Most people, my kids come home and they're like, why do you have these big speakers? And I'm like, I'm not even going to explain it, because that's how you're supposed to listen to music, man, over big speakers,
But now I listen to stuff and I have no idea who anybody is. I'm so far out of the loop as far as what's going on in the music business that, I just don't have a clue.
Yeah, it's tough.
I just know that I like what I'm hearing.
Yeah. Hey, I want to talk about a few artists you've worked with, and for each of them, you could talk about maybe how you got the gig and if you have any cool or interesting stories about working with them. Dobie Gray.
Yeah. Well, that was actually, I lived in Nashville for a minute, and that was actually up there. And it's kind of funny because he wanted to do it like a greatest hits record. But apparently he didn't want to go to the trouble and the expense of licensing his old tracks from the label. He cut them. I don't know what label he was on back in the day. So what he did was he recut all of his old stuff in Nashville to release as a greatest hits record. And I played on probably 3 or 4 tracks. The only one that sticks out is, of course, Drift Away, which is this giant hit.
Yeah.
And basically we just copied, we just copied what was on the original record.
Were you the only guitarist on that?
As far as I know, actually I was in an overdub situation, so I don't even know who else played on the record.
So you were doing Reggie Young's original parts?
Yeah, I was just copying Reggie Young's stuff, which was great. How cool is that? in Drift Away,
Yeah.
Yeah, but that was what was interesting about that. I don't know if the record ever did anything. I don't know if it was even ever released. But it was kind of an oddity.
That's wild.
But he was real cool. He was real sweet and nice, and it was great.
That's awesome, man. I interviewed Reggie, and he said the same thing. He was a real good guy. And I asked Reggie, I said, he's the funniest guy, man. I'm like, how did you come up with that line? He goes, man, I don't know. Because he's done a bunch of iconic opening lines. He's like, I don't know.
I can relate. Sometimes things just sort of fall out of the sky into your hands,
Yeah.
But yeah, I always wondered about that. I wondered if that was just sort of written into the demo by the writers, or if he'd come up with that.
Yeah, he came up with it.
I guess he did. Yeah,
he came up with it, and he was just sitting there noodling, and the producer heard it, and he said, "Wait a minute, do that again," and then that was the opening.
Yeah, I always thought that was so cool because I tend to think pianistically when I'm playing, and it's really it sounds like a piano part almost.
Do you play piano as well?
A little bit.
Yeah. Does that help you when you're like writing or putting stuff together?
I think so. It helped me discover some chord voicings and stuff that I might not have found, just by playing guitar. It puts your hands in different places, and you find voicings and things that you wouldn't necessarily find on guitar. I think it helped a lot.
Yeah, I would imagine.
Yeah.
Wayne Newton. Yeah, I'm glad you laughed because I was holding mine back.
Yeah.
Okay, so this is going to be a good story. Go ahead.
I don't know how good the story is. That was actually my first master session. It was the first record I ever played on. It was an actual release. And like I say, I went up with this band up to the studio was called Wishbone Studios, which was run by a fellow named Terry Woodford and a session keyboard player named Clayton Ivey, an amazing keyboard player. And like I say, they started calling me back for demos and stuff. And I somehow, for some reason, Wayne Newton decided to cut a record in Muscle Shoals and hooked up with these guys at Wishbone. And I guess they figured this would be a good time to call me in on a master. And they gave me the call. And that's it. We started cutting tracks. Newton wasn't there initially. And I guess I played on half the album, probably. And he flew in probably 2 days in while I was there. And he was exactly like you think he would be. He was in makeup, and he was just Mr. Vegas. Hey, just
dressed up really fancy.
Pretty fancy, yeah.
That's wild, man.
He was a snazzy guy.
What kind of music was he? It was pop, I would imagine. No.
Yeah, it was extremely pop. This studio and this production team. We talk about sounding more West Coast than a lot of what was going on in the Southeast at the time, and that was their thing. Clayton, half of the production team, is a really sort of a jazzy keyboard player, and a lot of what they were doing were pretty slick, pretty produced, kind of Joni Mitchell-ish kind of stuff. And that's what the Wayne Newton record sounded like. And, we cut a lot of covers. One of them was the Billy Joel song. What's the name of the tune? Don't Go Changing.
I love you just the way you are.
Yeah, just the way you are. Just kind of modern standard.
All right. Did you get to see Wayne singing that?
I can't remember if he sang on the basics or not. He may have come in later to overdub all the vocals. But I remember being extremely nervous because one of the producers, Clayton, I was very green. And I would go in to do overdubs, and he would come out to the studio and sit like nose to nose with me right across
Clayton.
Yeah, and just started to talk me through parts and stuff as we're going down with overdubs, which was a real learning experience, but it was also really, really nerve-wracking to be scrutinized like that while trying to get through this stuff, you know.
Well, you said it was your first master session too, right?
Yeah.
Oh my God, yeah.
I mean, yeah, but it was cool. I mean, it was Wayne Newton.
Yeah. I could see him singing that Billy Joel song.
Yeah. And it was all, like I say, real slick and real, which, I don't know, maybe the second or third or fourth project I was involved with there was Roy Orbison. And this was sort of post original rock and roll career, Roy Orbison, but pre Traveling Wilburys resurgent Roy Orbison. He was kind of in a no man's land at this point, and he came to Muscle Shoals to make this record, and they made the same kind of record on him. I mean, it was extremely slick and extremely produced and extremely sort of sweet and kind of saccharine.
Wow.
Which was weird. It got one of the worst record reviews I've ever seen in Rolling Stone.
Yeah, that's too bad. They cranked out a lot of music like that then during that time frame.
Yeah, and it was so sort of not how people think of Muscle Shoals,
That word you just said, saccharine, I think that's a really good description of a lot of the music that was coming out then. It was just so sterile like that,
Yeah. But, that's what was on the radio.
Yeah.
At the time,
Not surprisingly, that's when, if I remember, wasn't that when the FM pretty much started coming along as a radio for everybody who didn't want to listen to that?
Yeah. It had been around for a while. It was starting to get kind of formatted and stuff, and it wasn't quite, the Wild West that it started out being as far as programming and stuff. But that was the alternative.
Yeah.
I guess FM was alternative music back then.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Huey Lewis.
Yeah, that's a cool one. I don't know, 10 years ago, maybe, playing with Paul Thorn. And for a time, we were co-managed by this fellow named Bob Brown, who also managed Huey and the News from the beginning.
Oh, wow.
He's the guy that got him the record deal and so he put us on some Huey Lewis shows as an opening act, and kind of a mutual admiration society formed from that. And, we'd go out and sit in with them during their encore and stuff like that. And it was a lot of fun. Those guys are a great band. They're a great live band and a lot of fun to watch. And so subsequently, they decided they were going to cut a record that was a tribute to Memphis music, the old Stax stuff, a lot of the soul music and R&B that came out of Stax during the 60s. And they knew about my past in Muscle Shoals, and they figured that I could bring something to the table as far as that kind of music because of my Muscle Shoals connection. So I got the call to play on this record of theirs. They flew me out to the Bay Area in California, and we rehearsed for a couple of days, and then we went into the studio in Memphis, went into Ardent to cut the record. And it was a blast. Those guys are such students of that music, so much more than I am, really. They knew all the nuances and all the old stories, and it was a real fun project to do. It was very cool.
It's also cool that they, when a producer brings you in, it's nice, but when an actual band brings you in because they're fans of your music, I think that's pretty cool.
Oh yeah, it was great. It was awesome, and like I said, it was just a lot of fun playing that stuff with those guys who are so passionate about that kind of music. It would kind of reignited. It was very inspiring. Kind of reignited a passion in me for that stuff.
That's great, man.
Yeah.
Are you working on anything right now that you're excited about?
Well, with Paul, we have a new record this year, and they decided they wanted to do a gospel record of, I don't know, maybe more obscure African-American gospel stuff from the 50s and the 60s and the 70s. And we cut it in Memphis at Sam Phillips' studio, the one he had after Sun, and cut half the tracks there, cut the other half of the tracks at Fame in Muscle Shoals.
Oh, that's great. Just
to sort of soak up, the vibe of those places. And had some guest artists on the record, had the Blind Boys of Alabama singing on some tracks. Had a vocal group called the McCrary Sisters out of Nashville. They were in a pretty awesome gospel singing quartet on the record. Took it down to Preservation Hall in New Orleans and cut the Preservation Hall horns on some tracks. Bonnie Bishop, who's a great artist and singer in her own right, guested on a couple of things. And it was co-produced by a fellow named Colin Linden. I don't know if you know about him.
No, what's his story?
He's in Nashville, guitar player. And he is steeped in that tradition. He knows he knows all the ins and outs of that music, and he played on it as well. A great guitar player, great slide guitar player. And it turned out really cool. So that's what we're excited about now. We're out, some of the shows we're doing this year, we're doing with the McCrary Sisters. Some of them we're doing with the Blind Boys. Some of them we're doing with both. And it's a lot of fun.
I don't know if you could answer this. You've been involved in a lot of projects with a lot of cool people. Is there a way for you to pull like top 3 experiences you had musically for whatever reason, maybe because of the work you did or just the experience or it was a fun hang?
Oh, top 3. Well, one of them was early on with Paul. This is another sort of a manager story. He kind of got his entree into the music business through Miles Copeland, who was gigantic in the 80s. He had RS Records. He managed the Police, the Go-Go's.
Oh, yeah. It's Stuart Copeland's
brother.
Yeah, right.
Yeah, and he had another brother named Ian Copeland who was more into the booking and promotion, live promotion aspect of the business. But Paul originally signed a publishing deal with Miles Publishing Company in Nashville, and that's how that connection was made. So through Miles, we wound up playing. We wound up going to the UK early on, right after the first album was released, and he and I did kind of a duo tour of the UK, mostly opening for a guy named Jules Holland and opening some shows for Peter Green.
Oh, wow.
And just that whole tour was kind of a mountaintop experience because we played a lot of venues that I'd heard about for decades, Albert Hall.
Yeah.
And some of the places we play some of these dance halls, old dance halls all over the country. And you know how venues sometimes will post pictures of acts that have performed there on the walls.
Sure.
And I'd walk down the hall of the dressing room and see a picture of the photograph of the time the Beatles played there.
That's pretty cool.
Oh God, standing on the same stage that the Beatles stood on was really cool. So that was a great experience.
Jules Holland, he's the guy. He's got a TV show now.
Yeah,
I didn't know he was a musician.
Yeah, he played with Squeeze. Remember Squeeze?
Yes, of course. I didn't know that. Oh, yeah. I never knew that. Thanks.
Yeah, he
man.
plays piano and sings, and he does a Christmas tour every year of the UK, and he'll draw 2,000-3,000 people.
I had no clue, man.
So we opened his Christmas tour. I guess it was 1997, maybe, or 98. And we opened for him during his Christmas tour.
Man, that's really cool. And so what was Peter Green like? Was he well? I guess not.
It was interesting. He was sort of beginning a comeback. He was getting better.
Yeah.
Okay. His playing wasn't back yet. You try to talk to him and he would just kind of stare at the ceiling and mutter. But he was on stage and he was playing, and he was surrounded by people who were looking after him and kind of nurturing him along. Mm. Now, since I watched a documentary on Netflix a while back about him that had a lot of more recent interview footage with him, and he seems like he's pretty well back now. A lot more than he was, in the late 90s. Yeah. But you know what? He wasn't playing great, but he was still packing the house.
Yeah.
People remember.
Yeah. That sounds like a great experience, actually. Jules Holland, thank you because I've always wondered what his back. I guess I should have just looked up Wikipedia or something, but I never knew that he was a piano player with Squeeze.
Yeah.
He's always
a good one.
And he's got some great guests on that show. And I've always been like, man, how does he pull all these guests?
Yeah. Yeah. That's kind of a rite of passage in London.
Yes. But he's had Gilmore on there.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, I mean, he's had everybody.
Yeah. Yeah, and his live shows, it's a big band thing. It's a big kind of review, and he'll have guest artists, and it's a good show.
That's got to be a lot of fun. He's probably got tons of cool people.
Oh, yeah. That was great. It was great.
What else would you throw up there in the top?
Well, something that comes to mind is when we cut the Roy Orbison record back in 70, whatever it was. And I'm standing in the studio, and Roy walks in, and we start to chat. He introduces himself, and he's very gracious and very sweet, such a nice guy. And he starts chatting about guitar players that he's used, that he's had on his records and in his band and stuff. He's talking about guys like James Burton, these iconic guys, and I'm just kind of standing there drooling, And he wrapped up the chat by saying, and this was so kind and so nice. He said, you belong here too. And that's
so cool.
Bricks, because he didn't have to say that, it was a real confidence booster.
Yeah.
It was a moment that I'll never forget.
That's awesome.
As long as I live, it was very sweet. Very sweet.
Can you think of a third?
Seventh grade talent show at Cloverdale Junior High School.
There you go, man. That's awesome.
That was the moment that was the moment that cinched the deal.
That's perfect, man. Man, growing up in Montgomery, what was your childhood like?
Personally,
Yeah.
I was a quiet kid. Lived inside my head a lot. Like you said at the outset, my mom was a classical musician. There was a lot of music in the house. And I just I can't remember not being in love with music. I could just sit and listen to the radio for hours. It was the 60s and AM radio was actually cool.
Yeah. Sure was.
You'd hear such a diverse stylistic range of music on AM radio. So I would just while away the hours by myself, listening to the radio, fantasizing about playing music. Sitting in a little swing set out in the backyard, singing, pretending I was on the radio.
That's great.
And as I got older, and I think it was this way everywhere. Started playing in bands, I don't know, around 73 or so. And there were just so many opportunities for musicians on a local level in those days, in Montgomery. And like I say, I imagine everywhere else as well, because the live music scenes were thriving all over the place.
Yeah.
You could actually play clubs and dances and fraternity houses on college campuses and make a living just playing regionally and locally. So that was great. There was a lot of tension in Montgomery, as there is now, racially.
Yeah, I meant to ask you about what was that whole scene like growing up there, because it was a hotbed of activism.
Yeah, there's a movie called The Long Walk Home that I try to refer everybody to. That's a pretty good picture of the way things were in Montgomery in those days. It's about the bus boycott and the African American housekeeping culture in Montgomery in those days. I remember integration and busing for the schools when that happened. I think I was in the 3rd or 4th grade.
That's amazing.
And they were trying to integrate the schools and busing white and black kids from this school to that school to try and sort of strike a balance in the schools. There was a lot of pushback on that. I was just a kid through a lot of that stuff.
Yeah.
So I wasn't, I wasn't hip to the finer points of what was going on. I just saw that there was a lot going on with the march from Selma and all of that stuff. I'm sure it helped shape me in some way.
Sure. You knew early on, though, you wanted to be in music.
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
I can't ever remember not wanting to be not being aware of wanting to be a musician.
Were your folks supportive?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, they both were. My mother especially. Of course, she tried to push me into a more, being more scholarly about it. She wanted me to go to music school, and she tried to push me into classical music and that stuff. And actually, I pushed back against that because I was making a living early on in clubs and stuff. I thought, this is easy. I can just do this.
Yeah.
I wish I'd taken her advice now.
And learn some more theory or stuff like that.
Yeah.
Yeah. What kind of work did your dad do?
All right. He was in real estate. He was a realtor. Yeah.
That must have been a great time to be a realtor you look back at when things are growing, from a business opportunity or something like that. I would imagine the place was really starting to grow at that point in time.
Yeah. I don't know how ambitious he was. He was the kind of guy that would screw himself out of $100 before he'd screw you out of one.
Mm-hmm.
You know? And there were some somewhat lean times. You know, but he made a go of it.
Sure.
You know, he wasn't a big time realtor. He wasn't, you know, he didn't make a lot of money by any means.
Yeah.
And mom actually worked for the state Senate. She was a Senate clerk.
Oh, that's cool.
Yeah. Yeah. So I was around the Capitol building a lot during the Wallace years and all that.
Oh, so you were right in the thick of it, man.
Oh yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
Wow.
Still am.
Yeah, imagine
I'm
that.
Now.
Crazy, right, man?
Yeah.
Were you always drawn to blues early on?
Well, you know, it's interesting. 'Cause I heard that in your intro, and I've never really thought of myself as a blues player. I love the blues. I love listening to the blues. But my influences were more, I don't know, I'd call it maybe third or fourth generation blues guys. You know, when I was coming up, it was Cream and it was Clapton and it was, you know, the guys who built on the originals over in England and brought it back over here. And then those guys influenced the guys over here, which created sort of a third generation of blues players here. But I've never really studied or tried to cop, you know, the Albert King. I love listening to them, the Albert King, the Freddie Kings and Muddy Waters and all that stuff. You know, to be honest, I was more into, back in the day, I was more into jazz and fusion and trying to figure out what Larry Carlton was doing, you know.
That's amazing that both of those guys, Kelvin and Alan, both said the same thing. That's wild.
I think a lot of that comes, you know, my calling card is slide guitar, I guess. You know,
You're a hell of a slide player, man.
I've been playing slide guitar ever since I've been playing because, you know, I heard Duane Allman back in the day, their first album. It's like, I'm doing that. You know, I'm figuring out how to do that.
Yeah.
So I guess that's how people relate me to the blues, because you can't help but sound bluesy when you're playing slide guitar most of the time, you know.
Man, and I've watched a bunch of videos that you playing slide. I'm not blowing smoke up your ass. You're a tremendous slide player. You sound great. I mean, it sounds fantastic, man.
Thank you. That's sweet of you to say.
Man, it is what it is. What are some obstacles that you had to overcome along the way? You know, whether it's personal, music related, or business related.
Oh, probably the biggest one was my own brain. You know, ego is such a weird and wonderful thing, and insecurity and underconfidence is such a weird, not so wonderful thing. You know, over my lifetime, I have alternated between thinking I can't do this. I'm not good enough to do this, to thinking, you know, I'm doing these folks such a great favor by doing their project. You know, both things are completely false.
Yeah.
But they're both stories that so many of us tell ourselves, and we believe it. You know, and it either, you know, the overconfidence can keep us from moving forward, and the insecurity and the lack of confidence can just be paralyzing.
Yeah.
You know? So that's, you know, it's been a constant struggle throughout all my life.
Sure.
You know? I mean, I think people that get into this line of work are kind of set up for those kind of difficulties, you know, because, you know, a lot of the reasons they get into this business is to gain some sort of acceptance that they don't feel like they have, some sort of approval that they don't feel like they have. you know, and I was definitely one of those guys. So you're kind of set up for some psychological struggles, you know.
So you felt good when you're out there playing and everybody's cheering, but then when you have a slow period or when something's not happening, it's like all that's gone and it takes away your sort of confidence and mojo.
Yeah.
You start questioning yourself. Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, I guess that's why I like playing. I enjoy playing live more than anything, more than the studio and anything else, because it's more sort of in the moment, you know, and as long as you can stay in the moment, you can sort of defeat all those demons. You know, it's so easy to double think everything in the studio and look back and listen back and say, oh man, I shouldn't have done that. I should have done this. You know, but even live, even on a good night when the crowd's gone nuts, you know, and you can finish the show, go back to your hotel room, and sometimes you think, oh man, I'm God's gift to everything because of the audience reaction, which is not a good thing. Yeah. Personally, you know, or you can think, what do they know? I sucked. What the hell were they thinking? You know,
yeah, which is also not a good thing.
Exactly. Yeah. It can go either way. You know.
How have you handled some of this? Because I have mostly, obviously, guitar players listening. And I'm sure everybody or a lot of people struggle with the same thing, whether they're playing professionally or just, you know, on the weekends.
Yeah.
How have you managed to, when you get that little voice on your shoulder telling you, man, you suck, or the other one on the shoulder saying, man, what are you wasting your time here for? What have you done to handle or manage some of those voices, if you want to call them that?
I try to keep going back to something I read a long time ago. I don't know who said it, but it was a very wise thing that somebody said. That goes like this: you're never as good as you think you are, and you're never as bad as you think you are. You know, and I just try, and it's so hard to do, but I try not to judge my playing. You know, and that's, you know, that is the biggest roadblock that anybody could have is judgment. You know. And I just try and get in the moment, stay in the moment, you know, and just let it happen without thinking about it. And afterwards, I just try to let it go and say, you know what? It's just music.
Right.
You know, there are no lives at stake here. You know, it's just music. And we're just humans, you know.
Thanks, man. I appreciate you sharing that, because I think I think this is a common problem for anybody that's in any profession that's a type A, you know, driven and expects a lot. Because I know myself, you know, I am by far my toughest critic.
Yeah.
You know.
Yeah. Oh, and I am as well with me.
Yeah.
As much as I try not to be, you can't help it. Mm. You know, I think, you know, I'm 60. I just turned 61. I've been doing this for a long time. And I think that the biggest corner that any musician can turn is to get to the point where they stop trying to prove they can play. You know what I mean? And I struggle with that. And I see so many others, you know, you can listen to somebody. I can listen to somebody now at this point and tell, man, this guy's just trying to prove he's got chops. This guy's just trying to prove he can play. And as long as you're trying to do that, you're really not servicing the music. You're not servicing the song or whatever it is you're trying to do. You know, you got to stop trying to prove yourself and just let it go and just play.
Yeah.
Or not play if that's what it calls for. You know,
I think what you said about being in the moment, like I know for myself, that has been the biggest help. And just literally almost not giving a shit about anything outside of that. And I'm here and it is what it is. And that's it.
Yeah. Yeah. Oh, the best shows that I have, the best nights that I have are when I'm completely exhausted. You know, if it's been a tough travel day, I didn't get any sleep the night before or the night before that, and I'm just totally exhausted, and I could give less than a fuck about what I'm doing. And that's when I forget I forget myself.
All the head shit.
And it just happens. And I have great nights when it's like that. Almost without fail.
Yeah. Well, that's why people medicate, man, too, to get rid of that stuff,
Yeah. Oh, my God. Yeah. Lord knows I did enough of that.
Yeah. I've spoken to so many guys that was the way they handled that, And then I knew someone that was getting sober, and he told me this, and he said, you first start using as a solution to a problem you have, and then the solution becomes your new problem that you have.
Yeah. Exactly.
Your new solution to the old problem is now your really big fucking new problem, and you can't get rid of that one. It's not so easy. Yeah. So, man, well, thank you. I appreciate that.
Oh, sure.
Is there anything you've done over your career, which at the time was like a little bit out of your comfort zone, but hindsight 2020 turned out to be a real good move?
Yeah, there are a lot of little things. When I was younger, I took everything that came along, and it might have been, and I'm talking about playing clubs and playing in cover bands and stuff.
Sure.
And it might have been, because my comfort zone has always been rock and roll. That's what I cut my teeth on. I grew up listening to Grand Funk records and Deep Purple records and, all that stuff. And that was the stuff that I loved. But in Montgomery, I took everything that came along, be it hard country or funk, R&B, or disco. Yeah, I even played bass in a disco band for a minute.
Wow. That's great, man.
And those were all outside my comfort zone, but they were all great for my playing, especially doing studio work. It was great preparation for doing studio work because you get thrown into a lot of different situations, doing sessions. And I can't say that I'm great at any particular style, but I can fake my way through anything,
Yeah.
Just about.
Well, I think you're, I think you're pretty great at the rock blues thing. Like you're cutting yourself a little bit but I feel what you're saying. What's interesting though, before you get to the next thing, I just want to make a point. Most people think that, you preface your answer with, the bunch of small things. That's what life's about. There's very few things like, I think very few of us get to develop the iPhone, that's just, in whatever our business or career is, it is a series of small little things that adds up to, what you become at some point, it's rarely, I did this and, 3 weeks later I was touring the world. That is not the common story. It's these small things that give you the breaks that you did this and this happened and you got out of your comfort zone and that happened. So I think that's right on point.
Yeah. It's all a series of tiny decisions, tiny little things, the greatest life-changing things can turn on the smallest of decisions. I remember when school was not for me.
Right.
And I didn't go to high school. And when I was in the 8th grade, I think, I'd spent a lot of time with the school guidance counselor because it was a way to get out of class. There's a pop quiz. I need to, teacher, I need to go. I'm depressed. I need to go to the guidance counselor. There was some truth to that, but that's what I do. And I remember having a conversation with him because I was out of school a lot. I was quitting school. I was not going. I was having a conversation with the guidance counselor. He says, and we're talking about that. And I tell him, I said, look, I'm going to be a guitar player. And I can't for the life of me figure out what public school can do for me that's going to aid me in that. And he said, well, you know what? You're right. You're absolutely right. And that completely gave me permission to quit school.
What a cool guy.
Pursue this. Cool in a way. I mean, it was a good thing in a way, and it set up a lot of problems in a way as well,
But it was cool he was honest.
Yeah, yeah. Oh yeah, he was.
Yeah, that was
large
because no, most people said no, that's not true. You need to learn algebra for basic, which is all bullshit.
Yeah, yeah. But my entire life changed on that simple little statement.
Yeah,
it completely redefined my life.
That's a great story, man.
But like I said, it's a collection of small things. A big thing that was outside of my comfort zone was when I started playing with the Forrester Sisters. They were a country act that had a bunch of hits in the 80s, and it was so completely not me to play in that group. But it forced me into some stylistic stuff that I hadn't played before. It was a learning experience, a great learning experience, and I figured out a way to be myself in that venue, in that style.
Musically.
Yeah. And that was a real, that kind of broadened my horizons more than just about anything else I've done.
Did you like the music, or did you say that into yourself, you know what, this is going to be like free tuition on how to improve my guitar playing in a certain area that it's not my wheelhouse now? Or what was your...
It was both.
Yeah.
It was both. I grew to like the music as I started to inject, my own personality into what we were doing. It got to the point where the band, it started out, it was a big band, a lot of, keyboards, fiddle, steel guitar, and it finally whittled down to where, we did some shows as a 3-piece.
Oh, wow.
It was just me and drums and bass. And as I was able to sort of inject more of myself into it, I grew to like it more.
How'd you get that gig?
I played on, they cut a lot of their records. They cut a lot of their stuff in Muscle Shoals.
Okay.
And I wound up playing on a couple of their records. And a mutual friend recommended me.
Right.
So we hit the road.
That's great, man.
Yeah.
I wrote this down, what you said. I like that. You're never as good or as bad as you think you are.
Yeah. That's the absolute truth.
It is, man. It is. And you know what? Another thing somebody told me, this guy I knew who was going through recovery, there's a lot of wisdom in that stuff. He said, no one's going to bed at night thinking about me, because he was always very concerned with and his sponsor told him one time, he goes, you're worried about all this shit. No one's going to bed thinking about you. And he thought about it. He's like, yeah, that's probably correct.
Yeah.
And that was like a revelation to him. He was like, yeah, that was really good.
Oh, in the grand scheme of things.
Yeah. Everybody's wrapped up in their own shit anyway,
What I like to say all the time that, I don't know if this is an original thought or not, but one of my favorite sayings is all's well that ends.
All's well
and this is whatever situation you find yourself in, it's not going to be forever.
Right. Yeah.
Bad or good.
So, man, if you could go back and give young Bill Hinds advice, and assuming you're open to hearing it, what would you have benefited from hearing, 30 years ago?
Probably stay in school and get a musical education. Yeah. There's a lot of things in the business that I wished, I am fascinated with movie music, with movie scores.
Yeah.
That's something I think I would have liked to have tried for.
Sure.
That, and studying composition and stuff would have helped push me in that direction.
It is some of the stuff that you have to do in school is quite ridiculous. My younger son, he's 26. He just went back to college. And I said, man, you know, what are you taking? And he goes, American history and like 3 other things like that. I'm like, I didn't want to say anything to him, and I'm like, oh my God, he's 26 years old. He don't need to learn. I was like, going to help him. You know, he's going back to school so he can advance and have a proper career. He's sick of these, jobs. And there's a lot of stuff like that. It's just ridiculous. And I don't understand. I don't understand it.
Yeah. Like I say, I quit school early. I didn't go to high school. I did wind up getting my GED, and I did get a couple of years of college eventually. But it's good for your self-confidence. It's easy to think, having not gone to school, it's easy to tell yourself, God, what do I know? Am I smart or not? I don't know. You know what I mean?
Yeah. Well, going to school doesn't make you smart, though.
It doesn't make you smart, but it's a hoop that you can jump through and say, well, that's something I accomplished.
Right. I think it gives you confidence, but it doesn't make you smart. Yeah.
No, it doesn't make you smart.
We all met people that are super educated, and like, you have a conversation with them, you like wonder if they're even on the same planet as you are.
Yeah. I think the thing that made me feel the smartest in college was the way I cheated through college algebra. And I was crafty enough to figure out a way to get through the class without learning without learning a thing.
But that's another one of those things. So who uses algebra? I mean, I was real good in math, and I took like calculus 3. But in retrospect, I'm sitting there thinking, what a waste of time. I wish I would have learned how to communicate better. I wish I would have learned some financial stuff. I would have been much better. That would have served me. Calc 3, great. It looks good. It makes me feel good. But man, what a waste of time,
Yeah.
Hey man, let's talk gear for a few minutes. What's your go-to guitar right now? And what other 2 guitars might round out your top 3?
Right now with Paul, the go-to is the Strat. I got a 91 Stratocaster. And it's just kind of the Swiss Army knife of guitars. There's nothing stylistically that you can't play on a Strat. We go through a lot of different sounds and stuff. There's kind of a wide array of guitar tones and styles that we go through with Paul Thorn songs, and Strat is able to cover them all. For slide, I've got a 96, I believe, Les Paul standard.
So you have open tunings in there?
Yeah, my go-to is an open G on the Les Paul. Just whatever the song calls for. Open G, open D, open E, whatever I need to tune to.
Were those guitars chambered then, or are they the heavy?
No, it's heavy.
Yeah, that's what I thought.
Yeah. Yeah, the crick in my neck right now belies that fact.
Yeah, man, I can't imagine.
Yeah. Number 3, I got a 67 335.
Wow.
I love 335s. I don't carry it with me. We kind of, with the Paul Thorn band, we kind of play small ball, and we schlep our own gear and all that kind of stuff. So I got a hard rule, no more than 3 guitars.
Right.
So I don't carry the 335 with me, but I got a 335. I got a Collings I-35. I got a Sheraton, Epiphone Sheraton. I love that style of guitar.
What is your Sheraton? What year? Is it a modern one or an older one?
It's a modern.
I
got it maybe 10 years ago.
Okay, man. So tell me the difference between the 335, the I-35, and the Sheraton, because I've heard, I have that's a 335 over there, but I've heard great things. I know a lot of cats play Collings, and I've talked to a couple of guys that have sworn up and down that, the Sheratons, especially the older ones, are just brilliant guitars. In your opinion, what are the differences?
The I-35, just fit and finish are immaculate. There's a lot of hands-on, hand-built. It's a hand-built guitar. They actually sent me pictures of it as they were building it. Here's what it looks like. We just sprayed the finish on. Here's what it looks like. And that was really cool. Since I had the Sheraton and the 335, I had them put Filtertrons on it.
What is that?
It's the kind of the Gretsch.
Oh, okay.
The Gretsch sort of pickup, just to kind of get into that world a little bit. It's a smaller body than the 335.
Like a 339, maybe?
Maybe. Yeah, maybe so. So it's not quite as resonant as a 335.
That is a big body, the 335.
Yeah. And the Sheraton, I don't know if the Sheraton is bigger or not, but it feels bigger. The Sheraton's remarkable.
How do the pickups sound on there versus the 335?
A little less mid-rangey. Probably a little less character.
Yeah.
But it sings like a bird. There's not a dead spot on it. A lot of times with those thin line hollow bodies, you'll hit a note and it'll just kind of die on you. There's some kind of, resonance problem or something. But the 335, there's not a bad note on it. I mean the Sheraton.
The Sheraton, yeah.
Yeah.
What's the other Epiphone that was a little older that they had besides it was a Casino? Casino. Yeah.
Yeah.
Do you know how that's different from the Sheraton?
I know the pickups are different. I think it's more of a P90 soap bar kind of a pickup, I believe.
Gotcha.
And it's pretty noisy.
Gotcha.
I've never had one. Paul had one for a while.
Yeah.
Sounded good. The great thing about the Sheraton is you can buy them all day long for like $600.
Yeah. Yeah. Do you know a guy named, do you know Red Volkart?
I know of him. Yeah.
Red, besides being a killer player, one of the things that he's done, one of his side hustles is he's always bought and sold guitars since he was a kid, real young kid. And he said to me, I'll never forget, he goes, if you could get he said, you're much better off buying from the 60s, let's say, one of those Epiphones. He said, it'll still cost you $2 or $3 but you're looking at like, 12 to 20 grand for the 335s from the same period. And he loves those Epiphones, man.
Yeah. Being left, I can't afford to be real precious about guitars. Being left-handed, it's kind of, I think Elliot Easton owns all the left-handed vintage guitars. I think he got them all. So I can't be real precious about guitars. I'm buying off the rack new mostly.
Yeah.
The 335 I have was actually converted. It was a right-handed guitar, and it was converted to left-handed at Collings.
Wow, that's pretty cool.
Did a great job on it. It's you have to look real close to see where the right-handedness was as far as the knobs and that kind of thing.
Wow.
So I'm not real precious. I'm not real precious about gear. Actually, I love gear, but I'm playing through a modeling system. I'm not playing through amps, and I'm not a traditionalist in that way.
That must make your life you tour so much. That's got to be so incredibly easy.
Oh, it's great because we're on in-ear monitors, and which sounds great. I'll never go back, but I could never get a good guitar sound with a mic'd amp in the in-ears for some reason. It just never worked. But I'm using Fractal Audio Axe Effects, and it sounds great in the in-ears. Sounds great out front. I just go direct into the sound system.
That's great, man.
Nobody tells me to turn down anymore.
That's nice.
So it's cool.
Name a couple of players, if you can think of it, that you've enjoyed jamming with, and maybe another one or two you'd like to jam with.
I'll go back to Kelvin Holly. We played together for years here in Montgomery when we were kids.
Oh, really? You know Kelvin a long time then?
Oh, yeah. I've known him since I was 15.
I've
known him for 45, 46 years. We played cover songs, and we played a lot of Allman Brothers stuff, a lot of twin guitar kind of stuff, and we got to know each other's playing really well. And we got pretty intuitive with each other as far as playing together. That was a lot of fun. That's fun. Never played in a band with Alan. We lived together for a while.
Yeah. And you're not related.
No, we're not.
Yeah.
Oddly enough, because it's an odd spelling of the last name.
Yeah.
But we're not that we know of anyway. But I spent a lot of time with him, and, he was like in Montgomery in those days, he was the guy. He was the jazz guy. He was the technique guy. He was the fusion guy that everybody sort of looked up to. I learned a lot from him back in those days. He showed me a lot, turned me on a lot of music, showed me a lot of stuff. I'd love to play with him again in some way. Who else? Man, there's a lot of guys I'd love to hang out with just to see how they work. Rock Hooter, Blake Mills. Those are the guys as far as slide guitar.
You know a guy named Johnny Statula?
No, I don't.
He's playing slide with Twain Betts and Devin Allman.
Really?
I interviewed him, but you got to figure those two guys.
Yeah.
They know good slide players. I haven't heard him play. I'd love to hear him play. I mean, I've watched a couple of videos of him, but
Yeah.
You got to
Derek Trucks is another one.
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, I remember when I was living in Muscle Shoals, I was doing a club gig in Huntsville, which is about an hour away. I would commute back and forth at night. I'd do sessions during the day and do this club gig at night. And got a call from the club owner one time. We got this kid coming in. He's going to do a show here at the club. His name is Derek Trucks, and he's Butch Trucks is his son or his nephew?
His nephew.
His nephew. Yeah, and he's just this wonderkind on guitar, and he's 14. Yeah, but he doesn't have a band. Can you put a band together that'll back him up? And this was back in the early 90s. I don't remember when it was, but he was 14 years old at the time. And I thought, shit, I'm not going to put a band behind a 14-year-old kid. What are you talking about? No, thanks. And it was like, I'm looking back on that now and thinking, shit, I had an opportunity to play with Derek Trucks, and I completely blew it.
Yeah. It's a normal reaction, though,
Yeah.
I know. He's that guy's not normal.
He was a badass, he was a badass out of the womb, I guess.
Yeah. I don't know. It's one of those things you started so you can't be him unless you start 4 or 5 years old whenever he started,
Yeah.
Desert Island Discs, man. If I asked you to pick your top 3, no particular order, and just for today, knowing you could change tomorrow, what's your knee-jerk reaction?
Oh, the Beatles' White Album. Just because it's so stylistically diverse, it's pretty much, it's everything you need to know about the Beatles.
Yeah.
Weather Report, 8:30. Live album with Peter Erskine on drums and Jocko on bass. Just a ferocious rhythm section. I'm a Weather Report freak. Oh. Richard Strauss, Death and Transfiguration, conducted by George Sell, Cleveland Orchestra.
Wow, is that like in honor of your mom or something?
Yeah, she actually turned me on to that.
Yeah.
I love it. It's like a tone poem. It's like 30 minutes long, and it's amazing. Still it amazes me.
That's cool, man.
Yeah.
Hey, most important things that you've learned about yourself throughout this career experience and life in general?
Wow.
I know, now they get hard.
This is going to sound weird. But for me, it's a huge deal. Probably that I belong where I am.
That doesn't sound weird at all.
I think a lot of what got me into playing the guitar was a feeling of not belonging anywhere when I was a kid. And throughout my career, I had a lot of those same feelings, That's why the Roy Orbison thing he said to me meant so much.
Yeah.
That you belong here too. And I finally think I've come to a realization that I belong where I am. That I'm okay.
That's good, man. That means you're happy with yourself and where you're at. No, that sounds like a great answer, man. Well, that's fantastic. Yeah. That's wonderful, man. Best childhood memory.
After supper, more often than not, I would get in the car with my dad and we'd go down to the drugstore and he would buy a cigar and he would buy me a candy bar and we'd go back to the house and sit on the front porch and he'd smoke a cigar and I'd eat my candy bar.
Man, that is great.
and ever since then, I've loved the smell of cigars.
Do you smoke cigars?
No.
Yeah.
No, I don't smoke anything anymore.
I smoke cigars, and I can't tell you how many times one of the most common comments is because I try to be conscious, and I know most people are not comfortable with this. So I always try to avoid, and I'll walk by someone, and especially women for some reason. Oh, your cigar smells so great. And I'm always like, thank you, ma'am. And the next thing they say is, it reminds you of my dad. He used to smoke cigars.
Oh, really?
Most common comment by far.
Well, I think those are the only people that like the smell of cigars.
Probably.
Because a lot of people don't.
Probably.
I smoked cigarettes since I was 13. I quit, I don't know, a few years ago.
Oh, that's great. Good for you, man.
But now I can't stand the smell of cigarette smoke.
Yeah.
I smoked like a house on fire for decades.
Yeah.
I can't stand, but I still love the smell of cigar smoke.
I used to smoke years ago. It's gross. I know. I can't. Yeah.
Of course, I'm hooked on the gum now. I can't stop chewing the gum.
Great. No one's going to bitch that you're not going to die shorter. Your quality of life's not going to be worse because you could eat 10 packs of gum a day, man. No one's going to bitch at you. I did the same thing when I quit smoking. I chewed gum, like sugarless gum, for years and years and years. And now I'll chew gum once in a while now, but I don't.
Oh, I'm talking the nicotine gum.
Oh, you're chewing a nicotine gum. Oh, hey, yeah. Whatever. It's still better than smoking, man.
Yeah. Yeah.
That's a great story, man, about the candy bar and your dad's cigar. Yeah. Tell me something about yourself that people would be surprised to hear or might find a little odd.
Huh. I don't know. They probably think that my choice of recreational music listening would be unexpected.
Which is,
well, like I say, I'm kind of known for my slide playing and kind of roots rock stuff that we're doing. But man, I love progressive jazz. I love progressive pop. I love weird music.
Who do you listen to regularly? Like, who's in your normal rotation?
There's an outfit called Knower. It's Knower.
Okay.
And it's a lot of it's computer driven. It's funky. It's harmonically interesting. Sort of jazz funk stuff. Those kind of folks. Funky Knuckles. That kind of stuff. I've always been. It's kind of a dirty word now, and I hate to even call it fusion now.
Yeah, it is. A lot of guys I talk to don't like saying that.
Yeah, there's so much bad fusion back in the day, but, man, I'd love that, the good stuff, Chick Corea and John McLaughlin and all that kind of stuff. I'm super into.
So you're digging the stuff Alan's playing today?
Oh, gotcha. Yeah. He's great.
Yeah, he is great. He's tremendous. He's a hell of a player, man.
He makes interesting music, and but he also makes it accessible.
Yes.
It's not so far out that the average person doesn't get it. But I like it.
Even when he plays blues, though, he's doing stuff that's a little different,
Yeah. Yeah. Well, he's got that. He's got the same background that I do, as far as the Allman Brothers and growing up in the South and stuff. So he's got that in him.
Yeah.
But he's taken it. I wish I had the commitment and the drive that he had to become a better player. I remember when I was seriously considered going to Berkeley.
Yeah. For
a while. And a guy talked me out of it. He said, "Man, you're already doing the stuff that the Berkeley graduates are trying to do. You're doing sessions, you're playing,
Yeah.
I kind of let him talk me out of it, and I wish I had.
Yeah.
But that's off. I forgot what your question was. I think that was off subject.
No, that's totally cool. No, lots of this is off subject. I think Alan, if I remember correct, he's got like 2 degrees. He's got like Berkeley and.
I know he went to Berkeley for a time, and he went to Auburn University as well.
Yeah, and then he went to Musicians Institute and graduated from there, and then became a teacher there, if I remember correctly.
Yeah. He still is, I think. I think he still does stuff there.
Yeah, he does. He teaches all the time. What's a perfect day for you?
Any day at home. We're on the road so much that any time I can get home and spend a day with my wife is a good day.
Very cool. How long have you been married, man?
This time?
Well, you can add them all together.
We're on 4 years now.
Hey, man, congratulations.
High school sweetheart.
Really?
And we couldn't make it work.
That's great.
We were engaged and everything, and our lives just kind of diverged. We couldn't make it work, and we both came off of a divorce a few years ago, and just sort of ran into each other. And
that's a good story, man.
Yeah,
that's great, man. Congratulations.
Yeah, she was the one that got away, and we put it back together.
Good, man. That's nice to hear. Congratulations.
We took 30 years off to see other people.
So it's the second or third?
It's number 4.
Number 4. I guess 4th time's the charm in your case.
Yeah. What was the Greg Allman quote? I think he was married, 7 times?
Oh, I don't know, man. God, something like that.
After number 7.
Yeah, 7. He was married.
I think it might be me.
Yeah, 7 times. That's a guy. That's an optimist, man.
Yeah.
Wow, 7 times. Yeah, man. This is my second and last.
Yeah.
But I've been with her 26 years, so we're all right.
Congratulations, man. That's an accomplishment.
You know what? I think it's my best accomplishment, to be honest with you. I don't know. Yeah. And I married up, and she don't realize it, so I'm not saying anything. I don't.
Yeah, I did. I definitely did. So I might not let her listen to the end of this thing.
Yeah. Who's had the biggest influence on you, musically and also personally?
Oh, there's so many musical influences. Everybody's influenced me musically that I've ever heard. But probably my biggest would have to be my mom.
Yeah, that's great.
Just growing up. I never appreciated enough what she did herself with the class. She was a classical pipe organist.
Oh my God.
And I was impressed by what she did, but I never really appreciated what she did until later in life, and what she did for me, because, she was my first awareness of Bach and classical music and stuff. And that was such an education in itself, and I didn't love it at the time, but I do love it now.
That's great. And personally, who's had the biggest influence on you?
I could go so dark right now.
On all your ex-wives had told you never get married again.
Yeah, I could. Never mind. I could go so dark right now. I had issues from age 15 to age 25 was a really dark time as far as drug abuse and alcohol abuse and all that kind of stuff. And, I had several attempts at rehab, and probably my last rehab, the one that took the executive director of the rehab center hired me when I came out of rehab. And I worked there for 2 years, and he may be my biggest personal influence.
Really?
We developed a relationship, and we talked all the time. And he kind of took me under his wing and mentored me, and a lot of therapy and stuff. And he brought me out of some dark times.
That's great, man. And he put you in a position of service, which was real important.
Oh yeah.
Yeah. Good for you, man. Congratulations. That's great.
Of course, I got sucked back into the music business. The most self-centered business there is. It's a struggle sometimes to get outside myself, but that's important.
Yeah. Well, yeah. What is he? You want to give him a shout out? Is he still around?
No, he's gone.
Passed. All right.
He's gone.
Well, good for you that you had that experience, man.
Yeah.
Most important thing your dad and mom taught you? You can do them separate,
Yeah, mom probably musical stuff.
Mm-hmm.
That it's okay to play music. And I have to include my older brother in that as well. He's where my first guitar came from. And he was a musical education in himself. He turned me on to a lot of stuff. He's a great guitar player in his own right.
Does he play now?
Yeah, he does, mostly for himself.
That's great.
I mean, he has done sort of coffee house stuff. He's a fingerstyle player.
Oh, awesome. That's so difficult, man.
Oh, it's stupid. It's crazy. But he's kind of in the Leo Kottke, John Fahey.
Love John Fahey. That's a great gospel type. Yeah, he's done a lot of beautiful stuff, man. Yeah,
but he'll transcribe like ragtime songs for the guitar and stuff like that.
Wow.
It's pretty amazing.
Yeah.
He's pretty amazing. For my dad, humility, maybe. He treated everybody the same. He was gentle, funny, irreverent. Yeah. There are moments, they're both gone now.
Mm.
There are moments every day that I think, ooh, that was a dad thing that I just did or just said or just felt, and that really pleases me.
That's great, man. It's good that you get those, you can have those nice memories though.
Yeah.
That's great. Yeah. Do you have any hobbies or interests outside of music?
I'm a techno geek to a degree. I host websites and do a little web design and stuff.
That's good.
I'm just kind of a hack,
Dude, can people call you if they need website work?
They can. I mean, I'm so far behind the curve as far as what's happening now. It's not anything I pursue as a vocation or anything. But simple things I can do.
Gotcha. Bill, talk about a specific experience, and you've talked about a bunch, so you may have answered this already, that changed your life or altered the way you think about things.
Man, there are a couple of really personal experiences that I could point to, but I don't know. It might be too personal. I think going through, I was 15 when I started playing clubs. And in those days, things were a lot more relaxed legally, than they are now. And, a 15-year-old insecure kid with access to free alcohol all night long is not a good thing. And I dove headfirst into the alcohol and drug culture. I think coming through that and taking the steps necessary to rise out of that probably taught me more about living than anything else.
And that's a tough thing to do, especially at that age, man. So I give you a lot of props for that, man.
Well, I got to a point where I had no choice. It was either die or get better.
That's
that happened. That came young for me, and I was real lucky in that regard. Because a lot of guys, it takes 40, 50 years to get to that point.
Yeah.
So I was on the accelerated.
on the accelerated
accelerated bottom.
The accelerated addict plan.
So I was
but that's the same. That's when everybody gets sober, man. It's like I was either going to die and then like whatever that particular point is, that's when, it's always when I think like every decision we make in life, it's always when the pain of continuing to do what you're doing is greater than the pain of potentially stopping. That you say, okay, fuck, I'm okay. I've got to get this done. Or the pain of not doing, the other way around, same thing. It's always when the pain of one is greater than the pain of the other, then you make that decision.
Yeah. And it's the losing the things that you love that kind of push you to that point. Yeah. Losing the people you love and the things you love, there's that myth of the age of 27, so many, Hendrix and Joplin and all that, so many people died at 27, and I managed to pull up at 25, and I firmly believe that I would have been gone by 27.
Okay, for you.
Yeah. So
that's great.
I got in under the wire.
And you're still here, man. So whatever you did worked.
For better or worse.
Last question, man. And I really appreciate your time, and you've been so open. Thank you for everything.
I appreciate you, man.
Biggest change in your personality over the last 10 years, and how much of this has been deliberate and how much is just a part of aging?
I think I'm more tolerant and accepting of situations and other people. There's probably one or two guys in the band that might say otherwise. But I think I am. And I think it's both. I think part of it's just aging, and part of it is intentional. Because I think as you age, you intend to be, to try and be more happier.
You hope.
And these are requirements for being happy: is acceptance and tolerance. I think I'm better at living in the moment than I used to be.
Do you find
which is vital? That's crucial.
Sorry.
No, that's okay.
Do you find, like, I know I'm much more tolerant and accepting, but I also am 100% aware that I'm much more tolerant and I like myself a lot more. So suddenly, like, what other people did just didn't bother me. But I know it had to do because I felt better about me, not because I felt better about other people's stupid shit.
Yeah, you're right.
For me,
you're
anyway.
right. Yeah, and to take that further is you give less of a shit what other people think about you.
Yeah, totally. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Totally, man. Dude, I can't thank you enough, man. Let me tell people where to find you. I really appreciate your time. This has been great. And hope you guys get your ass down here so I can come see you play soon.
I think we're going to be down that way in January, February.
Man, that'll be awesome.
I'll let you know.
That would be awesome. Everybody, please check out Bill Hinds online. It's Bill Hinds, Hinds. And he's a fantastic player. I mean, he's a great slide player. Just a fantastic slide player. Let me tell you a few places where you could find him. You've been with Paul how long? How many years?
Oh, gosh. Probably going on 30 years.
That's the guy you should have married now, man.
I have. I actually have. We were in Seattle, Washington, and I don't know if it's still there, but there was a place in Seattle called the 24-Hour Church of Elvis.
Yeah.
And it's this weird performance art installation, and it's open 24 hours. And we went there at like 2 a.m., banged on the door, and this person that runs this thing comes to the door and lets you in. There are actually other people there at this time of night, and she performs a wedding ceremony at the end of the little tour.
There you go,
and
man.
So there it was. Yeah.
There you go. 30 years. Check out paulthorn.com because then you can see where Bill's touring, and please support Bill and Paul on the road, and tell Bill you heard his interview, and what a cool guy he is. He also does lessons, and you can go to his website at billhinds.com, and he will just go to the contact form if you want to get lessons from him on Skype. And you can also find him on social media, Facebook and Instagram. He's got a page on Facebook and also on Instagram. You can find him on there, man. Dude, any final words of wisdom?
All's well that ends.
All's well that ends. There you go. Touche. Good for you, man. I like that. Very appropriate. Thanks, Bill.
Thank you, Craig.
You're welcome. Everybody, thank you so much for listening. If you enjoyed this interview, share it with a friend on social media. We appreciate your support and help. And thanks again to Bill Hinds for spending all this time with us and being so open and cool. I really appreciate it. Make sure you go to the homepage of everyonelovesguitar.com. Sign up to get on our newsletter list. You get advance notice of guests, and you could actually send in some questions to ask them. And most important of everything, remember that happiness is a choice, so choose wisely. Be nice, go play your guitar, and have fun. Till next time, peace and love, y'all. I'm out. We hope you enjoyed this show. If you did, subscribe to the Everyone Loves Guitar podcast, and you can do this online at everyonelovesguitar.com or on iTunes. And if you like the show, please leave us a 5-star positive review. The more 5-star reviews we get, the higher our show ranks, and higher rankings mean we get to continue speaking with cool, interesting guests on our show. We'll see you on the next episode, and until then, keep playing your guitar and have fun making music.